Okay, so welcome to the 2012 Dictator debates. We have, well, how about you introduce yourselves and what position you're running for?
Baram Farzadi, running for Academic Funding Commissioner Division 1 and 2, unopposed, or
I'm Ashley Engel. I'm running for the Civics and Environment Commissioner position. I'm a first-year PhD student in atmospheric physics.
And we have the Pineapple running for Supreme Dictator of the GSU. So, I will first address some questions actually both related, since you're both from Refresh GSU, man. I only have one or two questions related to actually just the Refresh GSU, and so I'm hoping since we're both here, we can ask just one question. Why the name Refresh GSU?
none of us have been on the board or whatever committee. Most of us are new graduate students. We think we can bring a refreshing perspective to the graduate union.
Actually, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in response to a lot of the concerns that people brought up in the questions that were asked in the previous debate, which was, you know, there are a lot of frustrations towards GSU. There's a lot of confusion about what GSU is or what it even does for people. There's a huge disconnect currently between the union and the student body. And we really feel that we have the ability to come in and actually provide a fresh perspective, open up lines of communication, and really change this current dynamic that the GSU seems to be stuck in at this point.
Thank you. I will actually open up to the audience for any questions related to academic funding, Division 1 and 2, and civics and environment. And
so prior to the GSU elections, which way have you guys tried to engage with the GSU? In which ways?
So I've worked with the Physics Graduate Student Association, as well as I've been working within QB 3902. So most of my engagement with GSU has either been through like the different committees within GSU, through my Graduate Student Association in my department, or the work that we've tried to do between QB and GSU.
I'll be honest, I just got here a few months ago, so I haven't really done anything. Sorry.
okay, any other questions? Yes.
This is a question for Ashley. On your website, you mentioned your role as a member of the QP bargaining team, what your experience you bring to the position. Do you consider the agreement that QP reached a victory for graduate students?
No. I think there were a lot of disappointments in that process. But I do think that it is through actually engaging with the University of Toronto that you actually learn the best way to deal with these things. And I think that throughout my experience on the bargaining team of QP 3902, I remained true to what the people who actually elected me to be in that position asked me to do. I stayed true to what they told me to get at that table. And I think that for people who were actually engaged in that process, they're aware of the disagreements that occurred on the bargaining team. And I think that through that process, I showed that I was really dedicated to what my constituents in Division 3 asked me to go to that table to get. I didn't waver in that, and I supported their position until the end.
Derek?
I have a question also for Ashley. So you'll be chairing two subcommittees as part of your responsibilities, and I was wondering what you had in terms of specific plans for those subcommittees for the future.
So in terms of civics and environment?
Yeah, in terms of the civic environment subcommittees.
Sure. So I mean, I guess I'll start with civics. So I think there's a lot of ways that we can actually approach the topic of civic engagement. I think especially right now, we are existing at a point when continued political involvement is increasingly important. You know, even just today, we saw the provincial budget come down with a whole slew of decisions that are going to affect our daily lives. And I think too often, civic engagement is seen as a way to engage with, you know, electoralism, and is sort of boxed into this idea that civic engagement only exists when you can vote in an election. And I think that we should expand that view of civic engagement to what it really is, which is individual and collective action for things that are of importance in the public sphere. So I think that we should be looking at ways that we can actually engage with, you know, all levels of government, and all levels of the political sphere on a daily basis, and sort of, see how we can actually do that in our daily lives, especially if, in the next year, we may not be seeing an election in any of those levels of government. So I think that we should be looking at the other ways that we can actually engage with those governmental bodies and with communities in general. In terms of the Environment Committee, I personally have a lot of ideas for, for campaigns that we could be doing in terms of the environment on campus. In my undergrad, I also did some projects with U-Turn. But what I think is most important at this point, in my opinion, is that, and I'm glad the U-Turn representative sort of brought this up, but graduate students haven't been super involved, I mean like in the body, not in terms of the people who've been doing this amazing work through GSU. They haven't really been involved in like spearheading and running their own campaigns. So if this levy does pass for U-Turn, I would hope that we could use this Environment Committee as a way to really get people engaged in running the campaigns that they want. I mean, I could list tens of things that I think should happen in terms of the environment on campus. We could talk about like reusable containers in our cafeteria, which has been shown at other universities and even in the Eaton Center to be entirely possible. We can talk about bike share programs. We can talk about more of these green roofs. But I think there are also other ways that we can engage in terms of the environmental footprint of the University of Toronto, which is, the U of T actually invests huge amounts of money in extremely exploitative resource extraction, and I think that we can also expand what that idea is of environmental projects to both the environmental footprint as it exists on campus, but also how the interactions of U of T with the world around it actually affect the environment.
Thank you. I'm going to let this gentleman ask the question first.
Sorry, I didn't get your name. Okay, so I guess just because we haven't heard much from you so far, so I'm curious, like, what your opinion of your portfolio is, like, what the current state of it is, and like generally where do you think?
I don't know too much about the current state, but I hope I'm available for graduate students who have problems with professors or getting funding. Hope that funding is. The information about it is open and available. Because when I got here, I was under the impression that my master's degree was a one-year program because I only have funding guaranteed for 1 year. But really, it takes about 2 years, and I don't have funding for next year. So I'd like to make that available to graduate students who come here. Because I mean, from the outset, it looks like a pretty lucrative funding package, but really, for PhD students, I think it lasts 4 years. For master's students, 1 year, which is not really enough time to get the degree done. So hopefully that information is out there, and if they have problems, they can come to me before they go through the ombudsperson.
Yeah, I saw Jason's hand up was...
So I guess I have questions to both people, but obviously they aren't very different topics. I guess I'll go with civics first. So have you been engaged previously with any type of mainstream political system, be it like, volunteering on election campaigns, well, being in a riding association, board of directors, being in a neighborhood, like the annex, sorry, what's it called, when we have a neighborhood, no, like the residents association, sorry. Like the annex residents association or another residents association. Have you been engaged in those in the past, and can you provide that type of information to students? Would you be able to provide that information to students?
So I certainly do have information about how these things are. In fact, asked me if I've worked for a political party or volunteered for a political party like the NDP or something like that. No, I haven't. I have worked with like tenants for social housing, and I would say that most of the time that I've actually put in terms of my political activity has gone into community-run organizations. So, there is a lot of forms of civic engagement that exist outside of the NDP or the Liberal Party. There's a lot of civic engagement that actually happens like within communities, within people organizing around the actual services that they get in their communities, and also around people like defending social housing, defending public housing, and it's through those sort of organizations that I've spent my political energy.
Okay, I actually only have time for 3 more questions, so sorry Jason, I'm gonna have to cut you off because I think everyone needs a chance to ask, so I'll go Michelle, Shay, and You, sir.
This one's to Ashley. So one of the job descriptions for Civics is to monitor City Hall. We know that obviously the municipal level has a lot of issues that it governs over. And so, for example, this year, through most of the sustainability actually than Civics, but anyways, we brought a lot of transportation issues to the table. So that's just one that we decided this year to focus on. But I was wondering if you had any idea, like, is it parks, libraries, water, like where might you go with that?
So, and I can answer that directly, but really I do feel like when it comes to this kind of position, the most important thing isn't actually like my political direction or like the one topic that I actually want to grab onto. I think that there's a serious lack of political and environmental engagement in terms of like this student body in general, but especially the graduate student body. So I think like the first thing that I would say is I would actually want to engage with people to figure out what the issues are that they care about. In terms of what I think are very pressing issues right now, like libraries and community centers, as well as public housing, are things that are, you know, immediately facing the chopping block. And I think that those are things that are facing a really pressing need for support. Also things that affect everyone who exists within our community, from, you know, UT students to our neighborhood allies, who I'm also supposed to be a community liaison for if I have this position. But I do think that the main goal that I would have would not just be me individually spearheading a whole bunch of projects, but actually to be encouraging that kind of participatory environment within our university where individual members can spearhead projects on their own.
Thank you.
So you guys are part of Refresh GSU. So you want to change how the GSU has worked over the past years. So how exactly do you plan on refreshing GSU?
We've said a lot of things already. Communication channels opening up. Hopefully we'll get
Specifically.
right. Okay.
Specific example. How will you change?
Okay. As far as funding is concerned, hopefully we can get equal distribution of funding, or at least relatively equal between divisions. So generally speaking, Division 1 and 2 graduate students are sort of discriminated against because their projects are not seen as important as those of Division 3 and 4. Hopefully we can change that. Other than that, hopefully we can meet with grad students who have problems with their professors or any sort of funding issues. We're, like Brad, I'll work 24 hours around the clock, and hopefully I'll be available to anyone who has any problem.
Sorry, do I get to answer that also? It was directed at both of us.
Yeah, that's true.
Go for it.
Yeah, so I think that, sort of as I've been talking about, I think engagement is the #1 issue. So any union is not a body that is about the executive, but actually about having an engaged, active membership, and like that really is what makes an organization. And I think that there have been a few problems to like GSU actually taking that place on campus, and I think some of it is actually just basic mobilization. So it's one thing to spearhead campaigns, and it's another thing to actually provide people the tools and information to spearhead their own campaigns. And another way to actually facilitate that is to actually make like strong partnerships with other organizations on campus, and I think that GSU will become a truly powerful body within the University of Toronto when it is actually working collaboratively with QB 3902, with QB 3907, with other student groups on campus, and actually have the members who are actually running this organization, or supposed to be running this organization, being the ones to take the lead.
Okay, I'm going to just allow one more question because we have to hear from Harvest Noon, and then we'll move on to academic and funding 3 and 4.
Okay, I just had a quick question for Ashley. I know you worked with 30902 for the PA when we were negotiating. I'm just wondering why you didn't go for, I thought maybe one of the funding positions, or maybe even finance and governance was more up your alley instead of, I think like this position seems a little, I know it's a new position, it's not much involved. I'm just wondering why this was that you decided to take this position. What's your passion for this?
Sure. I mean, you know me in a small capacity as someone who has been like the physics steward, the Div 3 steward, you know, the mobilization person for QP 3902, and on the bargaining team. But I am also an environmental scientist. I'm an atmospheric physicist. I study climate. And really, before anything else, like my own political engagement was started off through environmental activism. And that's what led to my environmental research. So really, I would say that ecology and environmental sustainability is my #1 passion. And the thing that actually motivates me to work in organizations like QB 3902 is actually through what I see civic engagement as being all about, which is collective action for public good.
Okay, thank you. Please give me a round of applause.